On today's episode of Locked On Wild, a nice win against the Colorado Avalanche for the Wild, but Judd Zulgad is right. We have to do something about 3-on-3 OT.
Hey, this is Matt Boldy, and you're listening to Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is happening, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team each and every day, and we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day as well. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, we'll talk about a nice bounce-back win for the Minnesota Wild against the Colorado Avalanche, leaning on their defense and Filip Gustavsson. We'll also talk about John Hynes' comments earlier today regarding David Jiricek and what needs to happen for him to break into the lineup. And we'll talk about 3-on-3 OT. We have to do something because at this point, it's more like keep away than it is actual hockey. My name is Seth Toupal, host of Locked On Wild. And if you missed it earlier today, make sure to go check out the live show with Denny. Great interview with Joe Schmidt from KSTP. If you missed it, a fantastic recap of the state boys hockey tournament and some thoughts on the Wild and the NHL as well. You can find it in the Denny's live show playlist. I encourage you to go check it out. Let's talk about this game. And before we get to the game itself, because this was one of those effort games that if you don't hit that effort level, you don't end up coming away with the win. Obviously, Filip Gustavsson had a fantastic game, but we're going to talk about one number that stood out to me in tonight's game as well. But I want to start with what has to be the A topic. Judd Zulgad tweeting out during the game, I used to love 3-on-3 overtime, but the Wild just played keep away for 5 minutes, passing up scoring chances in order to not lose the puck to the Avs and force a shootout. The NHL needs to create rules about circling back the length of the ice. He's 100% right, because the Wild basically just used it as an opportunity to try to take a breather. And your main goal becomes not trying to score, but just trying to hold the puck so the opponent does not get it. And that can't be the goal. That can't be what we're striving to try to do. The Wild waiting all the way until time was winding down in OT before they even started looking at shot attempts. And I think the simple way to do this is to just either assess a delay of game penalty if a team does more than exit and re-enter the zone. Because when you have 3-on-3 overtime, there are going to be situations where you have to exit the zone. So you can't say absolutely no exits whatsoever. But I think if a team makes a concerted effort to skate backwards into their own end, I think you got to either go with a delay of game penalty. In those instances, we need to abolish the shootout. It's the year 2025. There should be no reason to have shootouts in the NHL. It is, I think, and I know it benefited the Wild in tonight's game, but it just is such a fluke thing and a fluke way for a game to end. That I think you just need to go to continuous overtime periods until a team is crowned the winner, much like you do in the playoffs, where it's just continuous overtime until somebody picks up the win. You got to do something so that you just eliminate all these instances in which teams just say, all right, we're going to take our chances at the shootout. You need to put the focus back on the overtime period. That's why the league initially went to the 3-on-3, was to try to create excitement during overtime and to try to turn the eyes and the attention towards that overtime period. But now playing keep away, nobody wants to watch that. Nobody's entertained by that. So you gotta do something to stop teams from taking that mentality and basically just using it as a rest period to kind of get your top players a little breather and gear up for the shootout, because nobody tunes in to watch shootouts. If somebody does tune in to watch a shootout, let me know in the comments, and I will vehemently apologize for slandering the great part of the game. But that's my thought, is delay of game penalty. You give delay of game penalties for players flipping the puck up over the glass into the stands. How is this any different? You are intentionally, and some of the pucks that go up and over into the stands, it's not intentional, but it's the same basic premise. So you either do something like that, or you just go to standard OT and you say, all right, we're going to play a 10-minute overtime. And if a team scores, they win. If neither team scores, then we'll go to the second overtime. But you have to do something, because this now has gotten stagnant and stale, and there's just no reason. There's no reason to pull the excitement out of the game and chance it by which team's players are going to find a way to get one past in completely sterile conditions. Completely non-game related situations, and which team's players are going to get lucky as to which gets the puck in the net. So I agree with Judd. You got to do something about it, because you should just never have shootouts at this point in the NHL. Now, there needs to be an overhaul on the point system, on the playoff system. The NHL's got some work to do on a few aspects of this great game that we enjoy. So what better way to start than by recalibrating OT and getting the excitement back, getting the focus back on, okay, it's OT. Whoever scores first wins. That should be compelling. That should be excitement for the audience. It shouldn't be an opportunity for people to say, okay, they're holding on to the puck. I'm going to go to the bathroom, or I'm going to go get another beverage. Like, you need to make it a captivating part of the broadcast. So I'm begging the NHL to do something about this, so we don't have to keep saying, oh, a shootout. The Minnesota Wild's social media admin, they had eye roll faces on social media when it said, to a shootout we go. Nobody wants it, so get rid of it. Just go to continuous OT until you have a winner. And then the winner gets all the points, and the team that lost in overtime, the winner gets 3 points and the loser gets 1. Or the winner gets all the points and the loser gets none. You get nothing for getting to overtime. Just overhaul all of it and prosper. But, well, we know we'll never get there. So just, I guess, hope that that the Wilds have the puck more than their opponent, so that they can ensure that their opponents don't score in OT. All kidding aside, pretty solid game for the Minnesota Wild against the Colorado Avalanche. We'll talk more about the game specifically, including one big number that led to the Minnesota Wild being able to beat the Colorado Avalanche at the X here this evening. That's all on the way as we continue today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by Factor. Looking to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. Plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfasts, and grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. The breakfast smoothies are delicious, by the way. and it's the perfect way to get your morning going. It's somebody like me who now has transitioned into very early morning life. Sometimes you just want to sleep in an extra 15 minutes and you don't have time to put a full breakfast together. You can grab one of these smoothies, breakfasts to go as you're headed out the door, and you're set. You're covered for the entirety of your morning. You avoid that early mid-morning lull that comes without getting that full breakfast in. So eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 off and use code LockedOnNHL50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code LockedOnNHL50 off at factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. We will have a postcast for you coming up on Thursday night as the Minnesota Wild continue their homestand. So we'll get back to the normalcy here, just swamped at this point with section championship games and gearing up for some collegiate play-by-play this weekend. So thanks everybody for sticking with us here. We'll get back to a postcast for you coming up after Thursday's game. But just looking at this win for the Minnesota Wild against the Avalanche, 2-1 in a shootout, and the Minnesota Wild led in this game as they have several times throughout the season. But even when Colorado scored with 5 minutes to go, they had to really earn that. They had to really earn that goal. And this is something that we've seen from this Minnesota Wild team, in particular against the Colorado Avalanche this year. I even tweeted about this a couple weeks ago. The games that the Wild have won against Colorado have been very tight, very defensive oriented, and it basically has taken a high level of effort for the Minnesota Wild to slow down this Avalanche team. And they got that again in this one. You look at the games that have gone the Minnesota Wild's way. They split the season series against the Avs. They won 3-1 on January 20th. Very tight game. I remember that game pretty vividly. The Wild had held the Avalanche to 11 shots on goal into the third period. Now, obviously, the Avs had a flurry to finish that game, but very tight defense, very stingy defense in limiting the Avs in their overall scoring chances. Tonight was no exception. You look at the expected goals for the Avs tonight. The expected goals for the Colorado Avalanche was 2.41. So anytime we talk about this, I like to break it down for the listeners that maybe aren't as stat inclined or are tuning into the show for the first time. Basically, the expected goals, in this case, expected goals against. That is in standard situations against standard goalie play and standard defense. If the Colorado Avalanche played against just your standard, league average goalie and defense, they would have generated 2.41 goals in the game against the Minnesota Wild. Anything under 3 is typically a solid performance by the defense. If the expected goals gets above 3, pushing 4, that usually means that the defense has had some struggles limiting chances and limiting opportunities for the opponent. So 2.41 is a very good number defensively for the Minnesota Wild. Filip Gustavsson allowed just 1 goal, so he was 1.41 goals saved above expected. Now let's break down the shot attempts a little bit. The Colorado Avalanche had 46 unblocked shot attempts. They had 37 low danger, 8 medium danger, and 1 high danger. And the 1 goal that the Avs got was in the medium danger range. Limiting a team like the Colorado Avalanche to 9 medium danger and in shots is pretty darn good work. That is a Avalanche team that has plenty of weapons. They've obviously got Nathan McKinnon. They don't have Mikko Rantanen anymore, but they've got Martin Necas, and they have several other players. Cale Makar is certainly capable. Joel Kiviranta was the one that scored the goal tonight. But you've got, Arturi Lehkonen is another one. How about Brock Nelson, Valerian Nichushkin? They've got a lot of players that are more than capable of putting the puck in the back of the net. So for them to only have 9 medium danger and in, and that's shot attempts, that's not even actual shots on goal, is really good work for the Minnesota Wild. They also blocked 23 shots. 23 shots. The magic number for the Minnesota Wild seems to be in the 20s in terms of block shots. If they can get 20 block shots in a game, and that's not the end-all be-all. There have been times that the Wild have gotten to that number and they haven't won games, but what it signifies is the effort. What it signifies is the willingness to do whatever it takes to win games. And I think the more impressive part of this whole mix is there were only 2 players that did not record a blocked shot. And the 2 that didn't, Gustav Nyquist and Matt Zuccarello. Well, it's not their forte, but Freddie Gaudreau had 3 blocks. Brock Faber had 4 blocks. Jake Middleton had 2 blocks. Every single defenseman had at least 1 block shot in this game. And pretty much all the forwards had at least 1 block. In order to win games at the NHL level, you have to be willing to put it all out there on the line and do whatever is necessary to win the game. Block shots, like I said, not an end-all be-all, but they are a good indicator as to the level of effort that is levied by the team in order to try to prevent shots from even getting through. And just look at the math there. So 46 total unblocked shot attempts by the Colorado Avalanche, 23 other attempts that were completely blocked. And if you look at the shots on goal, of those 46 shot attempts, 28 of those were actual shots on goal. So that's, for an Avalanche offense, that's a pretty good job of limiting those chances and those opportunities. And again, the one high danger attempt generated a .258 expected goals. So that one high danger opportunity, not a great chance to score a goal for the Avs. Low danger, just over 1 expected goal, and medium danger, 1.13 expected goals. So the defense spread it out, and Filip Gustavsson more than held his own. The other part of this as well, 3 of the 28 shots on goal, 3 were rebounds. 3 shots were actual rebound attempts by the Avs. And that seems like a low number as well. So the defense did a good job of getting to the puck, keeping it away from Gus, and preventing those second chance, those rebound opportunities that we've seen opponents feast on quite often against the Minnesota Wild so far this season. So a good defensive effort for the Minnesota Wild, and some of the numbers continue to just quite honestly boggle the mind, courtesy of Minnesota Wild PR. The Minnesota Wild are 25-0-0 when leading after 2 periods, and 27-10-2 in games in which they score first this season. That's a lot of wins, and it just goes to show you that that being able to lean on the defense and getting that full effort from everybody on the roster is the formula for this team. And it makes, to be honest, for instance, the game against Pittsburgh that much more frustrating. A game in which you're going up against a Pittsburgh team that's one of the worst teams defensively in the league. And you can't generate enough to get Tristan Jarry off his game. But this is how this team has been all season too, is kind of the Jekyll and the Hyde. This truly has been just one of the weirdest seasons I have ever encountered. And there still are quite a handful of games left for it to get even weirder. I want to come back and just have a conversation about David Jiricek, because John Hynes had some interesting comments earlier today about Jiricek, and I just want to talk it out and just kind of figure out what he what he's talking about, because it's at this point he's been up for a handful of games and has not even sniffed the lineup. So let's talk about Hynes' comments. Let's talk about the situation as well as we finish today's episode of Locked on Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. I literally have a bag of the no-shell, honey roasted Wonderful Pistachios sitting on my coffee table in my living room. One of my favorite go-to snacks, just looking for a little something to munch on while I'm watching TV. And the fact that they are the no-shell variety makes it that much easier. It is kind of fun, though, to crack open the shells, but I like to kind of eliminate the muss and the fuss by just going with the no-shell variety. So there are tons of great flavors. If you like a little heat, you can get the chili roasted. There are plenty of options for you to enjoy these Wonderful Pistachios. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that provides a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. That's wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Final segment of today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Minnesota Wild play the New York Rangers now on Thursday night. We will have a postcast for you after that game is done, because I'm going to be busy on Saturday doing a little college hockey play-by-play. So I will be occupied, and that's honestly, I'm super excited for that. So should be a great time, and we'll see how things go with the Wild. And of course, we'll have our next live show with Denny coming up on Sunday at noon for you as well. So a busy weekend. It's a busy time of year, but that's what makes it fun at this point in the calendar. I want to talk about David Jiricek because I am confused, I think is a good word, as to just what the overall plan and approach is for a player like Jiricek, who the coaching staff for the Minnesota Wild just raved about when he was up here previously, being thrust into game situation due to the level of injuries that the Wild had sustained to their blue line. And you get to the situation now where Jiricek has been up since Jonas Brodin was injured. He's been on the roster since Brodin was hurt and has not gotten into a game as of yet. A player that the coaching staff raved about, what he was able to do in tough circumstances, what his overall game brings to the table. He has just been stapled to the press box bench ever since. And John Hynes had some comments about the whole situation today. I'm going to read you the quote, and we're going to try to unpack it. Joe Smith earlier today tweeting out, David Jiricek scratched again for the Minnesota Wild. John Hynes on Jiricek, quote, "You're always cognizant of guys that are out. that you want to get them back in the lineup. Sometimes these opportunities present itself. We spend hours talking about the lineup, what we can do, what can we not do. And then after the game against Pittsburgh, in which the team, it felt like they just squandered an opportunity against a pretty porously bad defensive Penguins team. Then you come back and you go with the same lineup against the Colorado Avalanche, and Jiricek sits once again. And Michael Russo tweeted this out for this situation as well. Like, he's got to play at this point. He either has to be in the lineup up here in Minnesota, and he's shown clearly that he's capable of playing defensively at the NHL level. You either got to play him here or you have to send him down to Iowa to get reps in. And this is, I think, some of the stuff that kind of leads to frustration with what Bill Guerin has done and kind of the reliance on the veterans in the lineup. You gave up a first-round pick this year for David Jiricek, and there's an assumption that when you give up that type of draft capital, you're giving it up to get a particular player in the lineup. You're giving it up because you think he is somebody that can help you in the immediate future. You look at this blue line and how they are lined up beyond this season. Obviously, you've got Spurgeon and Brodin and Middleton and Faber all penciled in for next year until we hear otherwise. That's the plan moving forward. And you've got then Jiricek. You've got Zeev Buium, who is playing in Denver right now in what is 100% going to be the final collegiate season for him. So he's going to factor into the mix come next season. You have Declan Chisholm, who is a restricted free agent that I think has shown he's got some tools. His game kind of comes and goes, but I think with the right pairing partner, I think he certainly is capable on the back end of a blue line, and he's got some offensive upside as well. So you've got him in the mix. You've got John Merrill and Zach Bogosian, who have seemingly, like a lot of these other veterans, just been stapled into the lineup at particular spots throughout the roster. And I look at the box score here today, and the only two defensemen that were on the ice for the lone goal that the Avalanche scored in regulation in this game were John Merrill and Zach Bogosian. And I've tried to give those two props this year because their play, I think, has been such that it hasn't egregiously hurt you. Now, are you getting a ton from that group? No, but it hasn't been as porously bad as it's been in previous seasons. But this is another part of this equation, is this notion of just kind of being content with something because it's not hurting you. I think we saw some good things from the combination of Declan Chisholm and David Jiricek when they were paired together. Good defensive metrics, but also did a good job of pushing things offensively and kind of generating from there as well. And that was how Jiricek scored his lone goal so far this season, was being part of that grouping. So you see some upside and some promise. Is there potential risk in going with that pairing? Sure. But you go from a pairing that just kind of exists and maybe doesn't hurt you a ton, but is it helping you? Are you getting enough? Are you getting enough help? Are you getting enough offensive generation from the likes of John Merrill and Zach Bogosian to continue to trot them out there without even trying David Jiricek at this point? And this, again, you see this quite often with teams that are in playoff pushes, is that development takes a back seat to winning at all costs. And it feels like in this situation, it's like you gave up quite a bit of capital to acquire a guy that now you're like, well, when the situation presents itself, aka another injury, when the situation presents itself to get him in the lineup, then we'll look at that. Like, you could very well be super impressed with what Jiricek brings to the table, to the point that you say, boy, this pairing is giving us a ton more than we were getting from the Merrill Bogosian combo. But you just don't even get yourself in position to try it. I don't know. It was just a really odd kind of a quote to come to. Like, when the situation presents itself, the opportunity will be there to do so. And it's like, I think we've seen the situation present itself a couple of times, and it just doesn't seem like it's even on the table at this point. So I don't know. I just thought that was weird. I did want to give the Wilds the credit they were due for winning tonight. And I saw that quote before the game, and I was like, I don't know if I like that, but like I said, this is how organizations run when making the playoffs is the ultimate goal and the ultimate prize for the organization. Development takes a backseat. So we'll see if, now that this has become kind of a talker, we'll see if Jiricek gets into the lineup here in these next couple of games. Now that he's sat for like 5, it sure would be nice, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. So all in all, a good win for the Minnesota Wild, good defensive effort against the Colorado Avalanche. Let's abolish the shootout, and let's do something about 3-on-3 overtime instead of turning it into just a giant game of keep away. We will have a postcast for you coming up Thursday night after the game against the Rangers. So make sure to hang out with us after that game is done. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. We have new episodes for you every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.